Okay, so this goes out to something. So this is a MIATA alternator. This is the rear bearing. I'm going to try to repack it. I cleaned it out with some brake cleaner. And there's the front seal. There's a little cage the balls go in. And there's a little toothpick thing that I use to clean after you spray solvent in there. You can see the ball bearing, so I cleaned it out. I'm going to repack it with this grease here and then put the seals back on. And that's the back bearing to the alternator. And it's actually not easy to find. That bearing right there. So I don't know if this is the one squeaking. They both are kind of squeaky. It has a back one here and a front one that runs the pulley. So I'm going to repack both of these with grease, and that should fix the problem. This new alternator these days costs nearly 200 bucks, and even these bearings would cost, at the store 25 for the front one, probably 25 for the back ones, 50 bucks. But grease is cheap, so I'm going to repack that next. Okay, so as you can see here, it is packed, the bearing, with red grease, and that's what's stuffed all in there. So now it's packed with grease. You check the rear seal way back there to make sure the back side of the bearings seal is still there. But anyway, put it in. I spun it around. It's not making any noise, so it's nice and quiet and lubed up now. When I took the cover off of this bearing, it was pretty much dry. Just a few remnants of chunks of old 20-year-old grease. So anyway, now it's repacked. So you put back the little cage or whatever that goes in. This little plastic piece right there where the balls fit in. You put that back in there, and then after that, put in this little cap, grease seal cap, keep it all sealed up. So that's what will happen next, and then we'll move on to the front bearing. Okay, now that little plastic piece is down in there. That little plastic piece retains the ball bearings. I forget if it's called a cage or a race. I forget. I don't know. Anyway, I use these two screwdrivers to go on the sides there and push that little plastic piece until it engaged with the metal balls. You can kind of feel like a little positive snap, and spin it around a bunch of times to make sure it doesn't come loose, and then it's in place. It's also the tools I use to take it out, by the way. I just pry carefully, and then you repack it. And then the next step is to then put on the final seal right there on top of there, and that's it. And then you can move on to the front bearing. Okay, there you go. There's the front seal back on, packed with grease. You spin it now, it doesn't make any noise. You check the back seal while you spin it to make sure it doesn't leak back there. It's hard to see, but there you go. That's serviced now, repacked with grease. Who knows how long it'll last, but doesn't make any noise anymore. So if you get something out of it, it's better. Again, the alternator new is a few $100 now, and this bearing in particular, the reason why I didn't replace it is actually hard to find. So it works for hard to find bearings. So let's move on to the front alternator pulley, which runs, or alternator bearing, which runs the pulley. Okay, so here's the front bearing. As you can see, this is remanufactured. If you can read there, it's made in China. So when AutoZone or whatever remanufactures or rebuilds a bearing, all they do is take out what's broken. In this case, it was probably the front bearing, so they put made in China. And that's why it fails so early. The bearing I'm going to put in is made in Japan. This one is made in Japan, so it's higher quality. So that will go in there. So the next step is to hammer this thing out. Okay, since I wasn't diligent here, I got the wrong bearing again. This one is too big on the inside, same outside diameter, but that's bigger than that, as you can barely see. So what I'm going to do is return that, and for now repack that. It's making a little bit noise. This one doesn't make any noise, so I'm going to repack that one with grease to get some more life. Return this, and someday down the road maybe we'll put in a Japanese one. But for now, back to China. Always check twice. Okay, so here's the back side of the Chinese bearing. That's the one with the black top that I'm going to repack, and as you can see, that's the bottom. It's kind of dry, and the grease is dry and kind of just dried out. So I'm going to clean it out, repack the bottom, and then do the top. I think that's the way I'm going to do it. Okay, that's all cleaned up. The covers are cleaned up. Now I'm going to repack both sides of this front bearing here. This is the made in China one. The Japan one didn't fit on the front there. That's my fault. Always check, of course, or you end up like this. So anyway, I'm going to repack that with that, and that should make it as good as new. The grease in here, I looked, was that white stuff there, and it was pretty dry. It wasn't as greasy as it should be. So that's what I'm going to do next. So repack that. Okay, there's the other side packed, and I'm about to put the cap on and clean it all up. And I'll put it back on there. Okay, so here we have it. Alternator is back in, and the volts are, I don't know if you can see that, but it's at 14.3. Says 14.3, so the alternator's working, and it's a lot quieter. There's no more screech or squeal, and there's a rebuilt alternator down in there, and it doesn't squeal anymore. In this case, I did notice that the tension on the belt, the old belt, was very stretched, so it could have been a stretched belt or a combination. Can't tell. That belt is still a little tight, but maybe it'll stretch out. Well, we'll see. Still whines a little bit, but what I'm going to do is drive it a little bit, see how much it stretches, see if it stops whining as much. You know, I loosen it up a little bit, but anyway, we'll see. But for now, the alternator's good, and we'll see what happens. 14.4.